Alright, kind of one of these quick upload response video to Pyrrho, who was griping because I banned him from Tiny Chat. And yeah, I was probably wrong to ban him over it, but he just does keep saying things, and you're like, no, you're not addressing the point. So anyway, he was talking about domain name structure, and there's so many issues with the whole naming conventions on the internet, and the fact that they never stuck to the org or com or any of that kind of distinctions. And they never came up with a good mechanism to deal with the fact that more than one entity could have a claim on a name. So anyway, his argument was some sort of first come first serve kind of bullshit in terms of who should own what name, and I think that's nonsense. This money talks kind of attitude, I think, just allows rich people to buy up all the names, play a lottery game, win-win. Yeah, I just think that's just a bad way to look at it. So I think this idea first, the idea is it's a public infrastructure and it should function in the public interest, and it's in the public interest for major corporations to own the trade name of their corporation. It would be just silly not to have General Motors mean General Motors, and not to have websites that are literally true. Even stock symbols or whatnot should maybe be in the public interest, owned by the companies that have those symbols, and that's just the way it should work. That should be the first priority anyway, is to have names that are coherent to public expectations, to what the public is going to do. So if 2 million people type in McDonald's.com, yeah, they probably should go to McDonald's, the restaurant, not McDonald's, the shoe shine boy. Just makes sense. And so, yeah, certain individual rights should be limited in the public interest on a public infrastructure, just for the sake of sensibility, for the sake of coherency, convenience, efficiency. These are the things that should matter, and that should be the priority. And you just wouldn't counter that argument with an argument. You wouldn't explain how it's okay to be not in the public interest, to have an internet not in the public interest. I just don't think you can beat the public interest argument. It's the only argument that matters. And if there is a substantial public interest, that should be the primary interest. It's only when the interests become narrow and small and there's no real public interest that it would be no incentive for there to be any public regulation. So it seems pretty logical to realize that when there's a substantial public efficiency, then it should be allowed that some individual rights are compromised, and when there's not a significant public enhancement, then you don't compromise private liberties. But again, the internet is public infrastructure, and it should be managed to be coherent to public interest. And I just don't think that's an argument you can argue with rationally. So, I mean, it's almost like saying, like, logically the first search results on McDonald's at Google should be McDonald's the shoe shine boy, because he owned McDonald's.com, and because he owns it, he should be first on Google. That wouldn't make any sense. Nobody would think that's a rational way to index the internet. Just not rational. It's not rational for companies to market their corporate name with number 2, or putting the word restaurant or some other bullshit. It's just bullshit. This isn't a property you're buying. You're buying indexing, and indexing should have relevancy requirements. if somebody famous came along and had the name Inmendham, I would concede if I was getting 1 million views based on people looking for somebody else, that yeah, they should own the name, not me. It's just that you make a concession to the practical reality of the world, and that's the way it should be. Again, it's about indexing, not owning. Owning names is nonsense. You should own what you're entitled to, and you're entitled to be locatable honestly, not dishonestly. You're entitled to get honest views, not to steal views based on somebody else's popularity. That's bullshit. Yeah, that's not an argument I should have to make to a sensible person. So that's why he was banned. He wasn't making a sensible argument.